Last week, we talked about agreement within our sentences concerning tense, the remaining something being in the present, past, or future, and remaining that way, and how we both acknowledge that and revise for that, check for it. This week, we are looking at agreement in terms of number, and this is what we often call true. This is subject verb agreement. And if we look at our slides, let's go ahead and take those out. In grammar, number indicates whether a word is singular or plural, right? Singular means there's one, plural is more than one, two or more, right? Only three parts of speech have different forms that indicate number: nouns, pronouns, and verbs. For nouns, recognizing the number of nouns is seldom super complicated. For the most part, of course, there's always a few that in English are irregular. But for the most part, nouns are plural by adding s or es, depending on the word itself, right? So a cat becomes cats. Some nouns, such as mouse or ox, form their plurals irregularly, like mouse becomes mice, ox becomes oxen, and then some irregular nouns have the same form for both singular or plural. Think of deer. Right? We don't say deers, it's just deer, either singular or plural. And these are ones, it's very interesting. If we are speaking academically and writing academically, fish is singular and plural, and so is shrimp. However, speaking, especially down here, where the seafood industry is really big, conversationally, a lot of people do say fishes or shrimps. I think of my father, for instance, even though the grammatically correct when we're writing academically is fish for more than one fish, he says fishes or he says shrimps. But if we are speaking in standard academic English, these words and others like them keep the same form, no matter if they are singular or plural. Many pronouns have different forms to indicate their number. So for personal pronouns, right? I, if we're talking about more than one I, it's we, right? So other singular ones include he, she, and it. Plural is we and they. And ones that can be singular or plural are you, which down here we often say y'all instead of you for plural. They, and this is one of those newer ones with non-gender specific pronouns. It could be singular. Often we think of it as plural, but it can grammatically be acceptable as singular when referring to someone who uses gender neutral pronouns. Verbs. This is where the bulk of our content is focused today. The grammatical number of verbs is sometimes more difficult to determine. The form of many of these can be either singular or plural, depending on the number of the subject. So she sees is plural, right? Or singular, because she sees. She has seen and she saw. All of these are in different tenses in terms of time, right? Sees is present, saw is past, has seen is past perfect, right? But notice the difference between she and we, because we is plural and she is singular. It becomes we see, right? We don't say we sees, it's we see the kitten across the street. Notice it's the opposite often of nouns, where nouns get s added when they are plural, like cats. Verbs lose an s when they are plural. Notice for this one, we have seen has becomes have, right? Have is the plural form of has. Notice saw is the same. It doesn't change. A verb form will always be singular if it has an s or es added to it, or it includes the words has, am, is, or was. Those are always singular, right? She is, you would never say they is, right? The subject determines the number of the verb. That's an important thing. So we always want to determine, and we're going to see that throughout this lesson, that we want to see what the subject is, how many are in the subject, and that's going to help us figure out what the verb should be, what agreement the verb should follow. So 2 general rules of subject and verb agreement cover all of the more specific ones. Like everything is kind of under this umbrella of 1, a singular subject has to have a singular verb, right? If I have 1 cat, only one thing can be doing an action, right? Cats walk. A plural subject has to have a plural verb. Cats, or cat walks, excuse me, cat walks, cats walk, right? That is the rule. And of course it gets more complicated than that, but they have to match. They always have to match. A singular subject always has a singular verb. Plural subject always has a plural verb. So if we look throughout this lesson, any subjects are going to be underlined and verbs are bolded. So a singular subject and with a singular verb. The archaeologist, right? It's one thing, one person, works in Egypt. She was being mysterious about the dig's location. So notice if we change the parts of speech, or we change the number, archaeologist and she becomes plural. These archaeologists works becomes work, and with they instead of she, was becomes were. When a sentence contains a phrase or a clause that's going to end up separating the subject from its verb, think about when we had looked at those kind of more complicated subjects or predicates. Simply ignore the intervening group of words when you check for agreement. They don't matter. Particularly if it's really obvious if it has a preposition, that prepositional phrase, cross everything out of it till you hit punctuation or a verb, because they're not part of the subject. So let's look at the example below, because when a phrase or clause, I'm repeating, interrupts the subject, its verb does not affect the subject verb agreement. So look, the discovery of mummies interests many people. The fact that we have the preposition of is telling us this of mummies cannot be the subject until we won't see a subject, or we won't get out of this phrase until we hit a verb or a piece of punctuation. So our subject is discovery. Discovery is singular. So interest is singular, right? Whereas interest is plural. The archaeologist whose work is nearly complete require a bit more funding. Here, the subject is plural, it's archaeologist. The verb is require, not requires, because they are the things that require a bit more funding, right? It's not the work. The fact that the work is nearly complete, it doesn't matter. They need more funding, right? Let's look at this one. Your information, in addition to the data gathered by those working at the site, is helping to solve the mystery surrounding the pyramid. We've got these 2 commas set off here. That's showing us, as we've talked about a couple of weeks ago, those appositives, and the commas function or some people call them parenthetical elements. They function as parentheses, meaning they're unessential, right? What's important is that the information is helping. Information is singular, so its helping is also going to be. It's not our helping. Compound subjects. Different rules apply when we see the words or, nor, and. So when 2 subjects are joined by or nor, they're singular. Either the step pyramid or the bent pyramid is open to choice, because it's either or, right? You're only talking about, even though both things are mentioned, only one of them is actually being spoken about. Either it or that. One of them is open. The other one is not. So it's singular. Rule 2, a compound consisting of 2 plurals joined by or nor is going to be plural. Neither the pyramids at Giza nor the pyramids at Dashur have escaped the ravages of weather. Why is, well, you may say, Mr. Template, why is in this one even though we have or nor in both of them, why is this one singular and this one plural? You're right. We're still talking about only one of those propositions, one side, either the pyramids at Giza or the pyramids at Deshur. However, the fact is there are multiple periods at Giza and multiple periods at Dashur. That's what changes it to plural. Rule 3. If a compound subject consists of a singular subject and a plural subject joined by nor or, the subject closest to the verb determines agreement. So if we have two subjects, one of them is singular and one of them is plural, you decide the singularity, plurality of the verb based on which one is closer. So look at these two sentences. They're identical except for being flipped on each side of or. So either a lantern or candles are used. Notice this one, we're using the plural because candles is closer to the verb, to see into the pyramid's burial chamber. However, in this one, either candles or a lantern is used. We say is singular because lantern singular is closer. Rule 4. A compound subject joined by and. So all these last ones we've looked at or and nor. With and, it's generally plural because you're talking about both things simultaneously, right? Claudia and Mark went to the store. Both of them are going to the store, so they're plural. Whether the parts of the compound subject are singular, like Claudia and Mark, or plural, cats and dogs, or mixed in both, the conjunction and is going to indicate, for the most part, that it's like a plus sign. And so if you've got 1 plus 1, you no longer have just one thing, right? So it's plural. A lantern and a candle are used to see into the pyramid's chamber. We wouldn't say a lantern and a candle is used. There are some exceptions to this rule. When the parts of the compound subject only equal one thing, such as home and garden magazine or home and garden, right? That's referring to a very specific thing, like a specific field. Like I used to write for the home and garden section of the Times-Picayune. That's one complete thing. Excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Or when the word each or every is used. When we say every chart and diagram was precise, every ends up actually becoming the true subject, or each, whichever one we're using, and so it becomes singular. That's kind of a little slight exception to the rule that everything with and is plural. Collective nouns. These are words that mean a group of things coming together. So think of family, jury, committee. They can either be singular or plural, depending on how they're used in the sentence. A collective noun takes a singular verb when the group its names acts as a single unit. So the team of archaeologists has made a discovery. It's only, even though there's multiple archaeologists, it's only one team. The royal family is buried. Family is one thing. Even though I am a person and I have a mother or a father or whomever, brothers, sisters, we are one as a family, right? We are the template family. However, they become plural when they act as individuals with different points of view. So the team of archaeologists are quarreling. The verb is helping to determine that this is now acting as plural because they're fighting. They're having different opinions, right? They're not functioning as one here. The royal family are debating. If they are disagreeing, they become separate things working together. So it's plural. The word number also has special rules. When it's used with the, it's singular. Like when you would say the number, it means it's one. When it's used with it's plural. So notice I have the same sentence twice, except I changed the article here, the and a. The number of digs in Egypt has been increasing. I kept it as singular. With a number of digs have been increasing. So with the word number is plural. The with the word number is singular. Indefinite pronouns. So some indefinite pronouns are always singular, such as those that end in one, so like anyone, everyone, someone. Those that end in body, anybody, everybody, somebody. Or those that imply there's only one thing, like each or either. they're always going to be singular. Others are always plural. And some of these may seem kind of obvious, right? Like both. That's obviously talking about two things: few, many, or others. Those are always plural. Singular indefinite pronouns take singular verbs. Plural indefinite pronouns take plural verbs. The pronouns all, any, more, most, none, and some usually take a singular verb if the antecedent is singular, and a plural verb if it's plural. So you have to determine. So if I'm saying most is my subject in each one, I have to determine in that prepositional phrase behind it what it's actually talking about. So most of the pyramid was explored. It's talking about the pyramid as a whole, right? It's one thing. We keep it as was. Most of the inner chambers, you're talking about multiple chambers haven't been explored. We use plural, right? Have been examined. Titles. The titles of books, movies, plays, albums, any work of art can be misleading, especially if they sound plural or consist of many words. However, a title, to keep in mind, it's pretty straightforward. A title is always going to be singular and has to have a singular verb. So for instance, The Birds, it's a movie by Alfred Hitchcock. There are multiple birds in it. However, it is one movie. The Birds is one thing. It's one movie. So we use a singular verb. The Birds is a psychological thriller by Alfred Hitchcock. And with amounts and measurements, a noun expressing an amount or measurement is usually singular and requires a singular verb. So for instance, 25 cents buys an Egyptian postcard. It's functioning as singular. It's that 25 cents is one amount. With half of the brochures were mailed yesterday, that's going to be plural because half is referring to more than one thing, right? That half is actually referring to multiple brochures that are being mailed out, while another half is not. This week, all of our grammar exercises are the same. You're going to be given a sentence, and somewhere in that sentence, the subject and verb do not agree, and it's your responsibility to rewrite them to revise that one disagreement. And for all of them, it's revising the verb would be the best place to look. If you have any questions, of course, reach out to me. Good luck. Have a great week, guys.